Folks. Very nice to see you all here today, even if it is virtually and I can't actually see you in person. But my name is Oisín Hassan. I'm the Programme Manager of NStEP, the National Student Engagement Programme. NStEP is a partnership of the QQI, of the Higher Education Authority and of USI, the Union of Students in Ireland. And over the last number of years, we've been developing capacity building and training exercises across the country in student engagement. And what I'm going to talk to you today about is a kind of a new approach, a new national approach that we've been developing as we move ahead into the next phase of the programme's work. So, to set the scene, NStEP works off the basis of a conceptual framework that was developed back in 2016 by the Higher Education Authority through their Enhancing Student Engagement and Decision Making report. And it really was a seminal moment for Irish higher education because not only was NStEP launched on the same day as the report and tasked with building capacity across the sector, we were also given a clear message to go to the sector with. And that message, as John O'Halloran mentioned earlier, was that students are partners, they're not consumers, and that very clearly came through at a national level. And what we wanted to do at that stage was to support institutions, staff and students together to develop institutional policies for student engagement. And that was to happen through a series of 10 principles of student engagement. But since then, we've been having a bit of a reflection on what's changed in the sector, what new practices have emerged, and what have we learned as a national sector at local and institutional and at national levels. And what we've been doing is looking again at those principles, looking again at that framework. It was very conceptual. What we wanted to do was move to a more practical basis, building on the theory, but bringing in the reality as well. And you can see, I'll not take you through it too much on the screen, but you can see we've had a bit of a process. We've been building towards this moment. We've been working with you, staff and students in all roles, in all responsibilities and in all walks of life over the last 4+ years. And what we're trying to do is bring together everything that you've experienced and everything that you've told us into a new vision. 2020 has been all about creating that new vision, that new framework. And today is actually a bit of a launch for us in starting to move towards a new approach in 2021. That has been published in a discussion paper as of yesterday, where we try to set out a new framework for student engagement and decision making in Ireland, taking that idea of the conceptual and bringing it to you, evolving it, effectively evolving what we mean by student engagement to create a more practical and agreed approach for the sector. And this, for us, really allows staff and students to work from the same basis, to understand the same principles and the same concepts. And that real shared knowledge is a way forward for developing meaningful partnership. So whenever we talk about student engagement and decision making, I want to talk to you a bit about what our understanding of that is. We haven't sought to define really rigid definitions because everybody has a different meaning and a different approach. What we wanted to do was bring together an understanding that everyone could buy into while also using the phrases of student engagement and concepts in their own context. So first off, what we decided to look at was the idea of student voice versus student engagement, and they're very often used interchangeably. They're used to mean the same things, but we don't think that's necessarily the case because for us, student voice is where students actively raise opinions and views. Perhaps they're asked, perhaps they're not asked. It's that action of conversation and debate and discussion in an institution that is listened to, where students are heard. But that's not necessarily for us student engagement. For us, student engagement is the process where students and staff actually seek to work together, having listened to that voice and to actually begin to act upon it. But crucial to that is that student engagement leaves room for collaboration, because for us, not all student engagement is actually a partnership process. That doesn't mean that student engagement can't be very valuable if it's not partnership, but it is important to note the difference between the two. And for us, that student partnership is all about looking at power and how that plays a role. And that's why today's conference has been so important in terms of looking at power and empowerment. And that's been a big focus for us. We don't necessarily talk about student partnership as equals, because not everybody will play the same role, but we do want to look at it from this idea of reciprocity and beginning to share higher education and share our approaches to changing it. So what framework have we developed? We have a model that we're calling 4455, and you can see a bit more about it in the discussion paper. I'll take you through it very briefly now, and I won't go into too much detail because I want to give you time to mull it over and to engage with us in the next couple of months. Starting off with the 4-4. So there are 4 drivers. These are for us the cultural values, I suppose, that an institution should try to live and breathe if it wants to really meaningfully engage with its students. And that's the idea that the institution should be self-critical or critique and evaluate itself with openness and honesty, that it's built on principles of democracy, and that crucially the learning community is a community for all to play a role, and those roles shouldn't be rigid, that it is inclusive, that it gives space for everyone to play their part. And this idea that we've talked about so much, the idea of students as partners needs to be a lived cultural value of an institution in order to create real meaningful student engagement. The 4 domains of governance and management, teaching and learning, quality assurance and enhancement, and student representation and organisation. This is where people make things happen. This is where change happens. This is where those values, those drivers, need to be lived and actioned. And while there are lots of other spaces around the institution, we hope that everyone can see that they have a role to play in those 4 domains. You know, you might not be a teacher, but you still have a role to play in influence in teaching. So for us, the domains are where change begins to happen. The seeds are sown. The 5 principles. I mentioned 10 principles earlier, so this is a big change for the Irish sector. So I want you to take the time to go away and look at these 5 principles. But for us, the 5 principles are a narrative that we want everyone to buy into and see themselves in. And it's this idea that dialogue, it's not just about conversation and feedback. Dialogue is an active, meaningful discussion where everyone actually has a role to play. And through that meaningful dialogue that's open and transparent, we build trust between students and staff and vice versa. Through that building of trust and open conversation, we need to be equitable. So if we create student engagement approaches, can everyone access those approaches? Can everyone use the opportunities that are available to them? Because we so often talk about diversity in higher education, but how do we actively include the diversity of those voices? And by being equitable and inclusive, we empower both students and staff to take up an active role in that dialogue and that engagement. And ultimately, it should be about co-creation, where people can co-develop solutions and outcomes and ideas together. That can be the smallest of solutions to the smallest of problems. And that's where the seeds are sown for a much greater partnership. I'll leave you with the 5 enablers. We haven't gone into too much detail about those in the report that we launched yesterday, and that's because we want to talk to you over the course of the next couple of months about how do we realise these 5 enablers, how do we flesh them out, and how do we bring them together in a way that creates a framework that supports you in your work, in your role, wherever it is you are in higher education today. So our next steps are, we had a student engagement chat back in June, and we want to have more chats over the next couple of months. So we'll be coming to talk to you, staff and students across all walks of institutional life, to find out your views on the future of our framework, our national approach in Ireland. And on that, I will say thank you.